Welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman. I am your host today. And to say I'm excited about our guest today is definitely an understatement. You all are going to get to meet our friend TJ Morris today. And TJ has quite the story, quite the winding road, and is a very faithful man of God. So I'm super excited to introduce you to TJ today. Welcome, TJ.
Morning. Shalom. How are you?
I never know what's going to come out of your mouth. So I think this conversation today is going to be awesome.
Listen, I don't know either. And that has gotten me in so much trouble, but it's got me in trouble with the really nice people. But Messiah died for everyone, not just really nice people.
Yeah.
And sometimes people with scars and tattoos and calluses and wounds need somebody to talk to them too. So
yeah, I love that. I love that about you. It's one of my favorite parts of who you are as a human being. Just awesome. So welcome to the show. I'm all almost unsure of where to start with you because there's just so many places. I know a little bit about your story. I don't know everything, so I'm excited to see what fun things we're going to find out about you today. But let's start with today just your relationship with God. Like, where did that start for you? What did it look like?
Oh my goodness.
I know that's a big question.
Where did it start? I'm going to resist the urge to monologue here. And so I'll give you bullet points. And if you feel like taking a detour, jumping into a rabbit hole.
And I will. Okay. So, and I also think that's quite possible we might have more than one episode just to get it all in. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm here for it. So I grew up in upstate New York. I had a mom who was Pennsylvania Dutch, and which is Deutsch German, but they can't pronounce that there. So, and my dad was Midwesterner, Kansas, and so we went to church like Christmas and Easter, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Until probably about 10 years old, and then my best friend, his mom made him start attending the youth group at church. And he was like, dude, this sucks. I was like, I'll come with you. We can suck together. And so I started going with him to church. And this was a conservative Baptist church. And, all the things, right? And so I'm at least in church every week. I think it was Wednesday evenings we would go, and then Sunday mornings would roll around. And
so did you go both Wednesday and Sundays with him?
Yeah,
also?
so Wednesday was the youth group thing, and then Sunday mornings at church. And it was a conservative Baptist church. And so it was probably 50% people who meant well and 50% people who were playing dress up and checking boxes.
And that's actually a good percentage for the ones I have.
I'm trying to be graceful here.
Yeah.
And so somewhere around 15, very formative time for me. Number one, started recognizing what girls looked like. And there were a bunch of pretty girls at the youth group. So I'm like even more bought in on youth group at this point, right? But I also started playing drums and self-taught drums, and some dudes about twice my age literally showed up at my house and were like, hey bro, we understand that you play drums, you want to jam sometime? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to jam, let's do it.
Wow.
And so my bedroom ended up with like a drum set and Marshall full stacks and a bass stack and a little Tascam 4-track recorder, and we start cutting demos. And so the church thing is building at the same time that the heavy metal thing is building.
And at this point, let me just ask you real quick. At this point, as a 15-year-old boy, church was a duty. Did you feel the presence of God at that point?
So I had felt the presence of God at one point in my life. At this point, there was a huge youth rally in Washington, D.C., believe it or not. Knowing what I know now makes me shiver. But we're out there on the National Mall, and there was some dude up on stage praying, and he asked everybody to pray. And then he ended up praying a prayer of repentance, right? If you want to accept Messiah, you go ahead and say this along with me. And I did. And it was beautiful. I could feel the Spirit. And then it was like the spigot turned off when we left there. And so call it my fire insurance. I was was I a believer? Man, in word only. I was going to church to check out chicks and playing heavy metal. And then my best friend that had gotten us involved in the church, his parents got a divorce. And the hypocrisy of people, church people, really wounded me. It was an ugly divorce. He did not have a place to live as a 15-year-old kid. Wow. So he came to live with us, pushed me kind of over the edge into heavy metal. And long and short, I spent about a decade in apostasy playing drums in satanic heavy metal bands. I'm covered in tattoos that are in no way honorific of the Most High. If it's bad for you or bad for somebody else, I've probably done it. If it's a Schedule 1 narcotic, oh, hell yeah. I mean, sex, drugs, and rock and roll like that, but with heavy metal. I was also, when I wasn't touring and playing drums and recording, I was building my first business. It's a whole nother sidebar. But anyway, I realize in hindsight, talk about protection and mercy and grace. I was just pissed off.
Yeah.
I was just pissed off at people. And it took me a long time to realize that people make mistakes. God doesn't. Right? Like we're all going to mess up.
Man, that's a great point.
Listen, if we were perfect, we wouldn't need the redemption of Messiah. There wouldn't need to be a way to atone for sins. There's no need for remediation if we're perfect.
True.
And we're not. I'm certainly not. But as a 15-year-old kid, my level of introspection is non-existent. Right. So
right. We'll give you grace for being 15.
Right. But that whole time that I spent literally a decade in apostasy. I was, touring with the big three black metal bands from Norway, all of which are satanic in nature, Mayhem and Dimmu Borgir and
Well, Emperor. Tell our listeners what apostasy means, because there's going to be people listening to this you're going to hear that word from you 3 times and be like, what the hell is that?
So apostasy is rejection of God. So an apostate is somebody who has severed their relationship. It's an unbeliever. And it's different than agnosticism or atheism. Okay. Apostasy is 2 middle fingers thrown at the sky. That's what it was for me.
Okay.
But I realized much later in hindsight, the grace and mercy here was that I was pissed off. I was just pissed. Who was I mad at? God. So I never stopped believing in God because I had to have somebody to be mad at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he wasn't a fairy tale to me. It wasn't make-believe. I was just pissed. And many years later, I end up in North Texas. I have a wife and 2 small kids now. And our neighbor was over for a birthday party. And she said, hey, my husband's the associate pastor at this little church. He's given the message a couple weeks from now. We would love it if you could be our guest.
Aww.
And I'm like, my immediate thought is like, not a fucking chance in hell.
How long ago was that?
Oh, man.
2 small kids. So it couldn't have been that long ago.
14 years ago?
Okay, so
14 years ago.
All right, so take you 15 and then 14 years ago. So I'm doing the math fast. So
it was about
that
27.
Time you were, okay.
Somewhere in there. Okay. 27.
So from 15 to 27, you were pretty much just middle fingers up to the sky.
100%.
Got it.
100%. And I realized I'm not a moron. I'm not necessarily gifted, but I'm not a moron. You hit an inflection point where your apostasy becomes a stumbling block for your ability to earn. And so I started putting on long sleeve shirts and being quiet about that and keeping my beliefs to myself. Because, who wants to hire the crazy satanic heathen? No one. Yeah. No one does.
Yeah.
So, and rightfully so, I barely had my shit together. So giving me money, probably a bad idea. But anyway, so I go to this little church and it's in a middle school cafetorium, half cafeteria, half auditorium. We were the 6th family at this little church. And so I go there. I don't want to go. I wake up Sunday morning. I'm like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And I'm just overcome by this, like, it's like righteous anxiety. Now I know it's the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'm like, what is happening? You know? And so I wake up and I get dressed, and then I change, and then I change again. And finally, I'm like, I'm going to church in jeans and work boots. And if they don't like me in jeans and work boots, they can kiss my ass because this is who I am. Right. And so I drink a pot of coffee. That didn't help. Go to church, walk through the door, and everybody's just so damn nice. And they're like, remember my name. And they're like, come sit here. And so I'm sitting right up front. I'm like 6 feet from the pastor. And now, again, I understand synchronicity in the spirit, but at the time, I'm like, this guy's talking about me. And he's just hellfire and brimstone preaching the word. And Angela, I'm violently shaking because my fight or flight is overwhelmed.
Getting exercised, bro. That's what was happening for you. Yeah.
That's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Because what was in me could not tolerate to be in the presence of light.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And my fight or flight has been broken since about 12 years old. So I have a fight or fight. I'm really bad at running. So we'll just stand here and duke it out, right? And so I sit for an hour in the front row, violently shaking. And they get to the final little worship song, and I run out the side door.
Wow.
We're done. And I drive home, and my wife is like, how was it? I said, oh God, I hated that. She's like, okay. I said, I got to go back.
And she was with you. She was with you.
I was like, the first time was just me.
It was just you by yourself. So she didn't get to experience the physical reaction that you had to receiving the word that day.
Until week 2.
Okay.
I said, I'm going back and you're going with me. She's like, okay. So we arranged for the kids to be watched at the house, right? And so it's me and her. And actually, that's not true. My kids were out of town, but different conversation. So it's just me and her. We go in there and we sit right front and center again. She's sitting next to me. We're holding hands and we're both violently shaken like a pair of just heathen sinners, right? And same MO, modus operandi. They come to the final worship song and we run out the side door.
Wow.
And we get in the truck and I said, all right, babe, what did you think? She goes, oh, that was terrible. I hated that. I said, yeah, me too. She goes, we got to go back. And I'm like, I know. This is terrible.
You were still had some stuff left in there, man.
Oh, Angela. One does not spend as much time apart from the Most High as I did. And then, it takes time
to come back,
to shift the Overton window. And so third time pays for all. We go back the third time, following weekend, bring the kids with us, stick them into the, Sunday school program. And, same thing, shaking violently. And it's time to run out the side door. Oh, thank God it's over. It's time to run out the side door. Well, the pastor was on to us, and he had the associate pastor do the final prayer, and he was waiting for us in the hallway.
Oh, dang.
And he comes over to me and he says, hey, I understand you're a drummer. Shit. Yes. Yes, I'm a drummer.
Church and drums coming back together.
And he puts his arm around me and he says, we've been praying for a drummer for the worship band for 2 years. Would you prayerfully consider it?
Wow. My whole body just lit up just now when you said that.
I said, I'll think about it. So I go back to the house and I'm talking to my wife. I was like, I don't want to do it. She's like, well, then don't do it. I was like, but I have to do it. She's like, well, then do it. Okay. I said, I know how to fix this, dude. And so I sent him some videos of me playing drums. Like, full heathen mode playing drums. Just, like that, right? Like he'll never ask me to do anything in church again. Well, he forwarded that to the worship leader. Now, 15 minutes later, I get a reply. I'm CC'd on a reply from the worship leader. Exact words were, oh, hell yeah, get this guy. That's awesome. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. So, Angela, I start playing drums at this little tiny church. And when I say playing drums, I'm bringing in, it takes 17 trips from the truck to the stage to set my drums up.
No joke. You brought it all.
I brought drums.
Oh, boy.
And so we start playing worship.
And how many people in this church?
At this time, like 30,
oh
there's like
boy.
30 people.
Every week into the cafetorium.
Well, yeah. And it was amazing. It was so cool because the Father met me precisely where I was at. And I started having literal out of body experiences for 18 minutes every Sunday, playing 4 or 5 worship songs every morning, where people would come up to me afterwards and they go, "That was amazing. I've never heard that played like that before. How are you doing that?" I don't know. I wasn't there. It wasn't me playing drums. And so, about a year after, the pastor comes up to me and he says, "A couple Sundays from now, we're going to be doing baptisms. And I think you're ready. I can see it in you. I think you're ready." And in my flesh, I'm like, no way. There's zero. No, I don't want to do this. This is going to be terrible. But the Spirit, got a little bit of the Spirit in me. Spirit is like, "Listen, dumbass, get in the water now." Like, okay, all right. So I do. And I'm baptized in front of the whole church. And shortly thereafter, unbeknownst to us, the eldership, the elders and the pastor had been in like a long time feud. And the church blew up because of the egos of men. And I was so pissed. Like, you'll notice a trend here. Anger, I used to say that anger is my superpower. It's not. I'm really good at it because anger is armor that I use to cover up my superpower, which is actually loving people. But I've had so many people that I loved hurt me over the years.
Yeah.
But I covered that up with the armor of anger.
Yeah.
So I'll let all the worldly BS smack into my armor of anger so that it never reaches the love.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the love can't get out when the armor is on, right? So Book of James, the wrath of man works not the righteousness of Elohim, the righteousness of God. So you can't be righteous and pissed off at the same time.
No.
Yeah. So church implodes. I'm pissed. And I go back to my house and I'm like, I got nothing. What am I supposed to do here? And all that I knew was that the Bible was true, that God was real, and that Messiah, Jesus, is real. That's all I knew.
So at that time, you didn't recognize that God was actually moving in that church. You couldn't see that because all you could see was just the infighting and all of that. And what God was doing was removing the people who were not true to him from that particular church.
And so at this point, we're like 200 people strong, right?
Okay.
Think about how many strong believers were starbursted like a firework out of that place into other communities, into other churches to go be the light there.
Yeah.
Right. So this is, more perspective as I've gotten older. Messiah talks about this, that a seed cannot reproduce unless it goes into the ground and dies. Right. One man sows and another man reaps. But at the time, it's me, I, who's going to feed me? And literally one day I'm in my kitchen, pissed off, and I'm just yelling at God because I'm good at that. I've got a long history of yelling at him. And clear as a bell, I'm like, who's going to read the Bible? And clear as a bell, how long have you owned my word? I'm like, I guess my whole life. And then clear as a bell, why haven't you read it? Okay. So I'm like, well, I guess I should read the Bible. Where do you start? In the beginning, dumbass. Genesis 1:1. Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Like any other book, right? We don't go to a movie an hour and 15 minutes in the movie and think we got it all figured out, right? You get there early, you get your popcorn and your 44 ounces of diabetes and everything else, right? So same thing with the Bible. I just start reading Genesis, then Exodus, then Leviticus, then Numbers, then Deuteronomy, then Joshua. And I'm like, now I'm even more pissed off. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a ton of stuff in here that nobody ever told me.
Yep.
And I'm yelling at God again. And he's like, hey, that's because it's your job. It's your job to read the word. It's your job to talk to me. It's not anybody else's job. And what had been happening was my entire life up to that point, I'd been subcontracting my faith to other people. And the results that I was getting were exactly as one would expect if you had subcontracted your faith to somebody else.
Yep.
So, Messiah talks about work out your own faith with fear and trembling. Okay, so it's an individual relationship. We have an intercessor, a go-between in between us and the Most High in Messiah. But it's between me and him. It's between you and him, right? I could teach on that for an hour. Fast forward, because I told you I didn't want a monologue, but
No, you're good. You're fine. Don't worry. I'll get my time in. I'm hearing what's happening right now.
So I start reading the Bible, and there's all this stuff in here that nobody ever told me before. So I read it again, and I read it again, and I read it again, and I just.
What was the most impactful thing for you at that time with what you were going through?
So, at this point, me and my wife have got a contracting company. I had come out of the wind turbine industry. I met my wife. I told her 9 days after I met her that I loved her, and hey, let's do life together. Mm-hmm. And luckily, or by the hand of the Most High, she said, I love you too. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. And so we have this contracting company. We're running multiple jobs at the same time. We've got employees, trucks, the whole nine. And I'm just run ragged. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading in Leviticus chapter 23 about this word, Sabbath. What the hell is a Sabbath? And the fathers just punched me in the forehead with like, you're supposed to take 1 day off a week, dumbass, and do no work. And it's like, well, I can't. It's like, and so here's the thing. Who's in charge here, me or him?
Yeah, not you, bro.
Right.
Not you.
And this is a common mistake that believers make. We want to pray God into our position rather than pray us into God's position because he's sovereign and I'm not, right? All the money in the world is his. You read in Jeremiah, the Israelites had stopped bringing their offerings, their sacrificial offerings, and God's pissed. And he goes, give me my sheep, give me my goats. They're mine, right? And so we look at all this stuff that we have in life where it's like, it's my house, it's my truck, they're my companies. No. They're just on loan. Mm-hmm. My wife was a daughter of the Most High before she was my wife.
That's right.
My kids were known in the womb by him before I ever held them. Mm-hmm. So what does that leave me? Stewardship. That's my job, is to steward.
I love that.
So anyway, I'm like, you got to take Shabbat off. And I'm like, this is retarded. There's no way. I can't. He's like, take Shabbat off. Okay. And he literally brought us to the brink of devastation. I had 16 cents left in my bank account.
Yeah, he gave you no choice. He said, if you won't do it for me, I will force you. You will have no choice.
And you know what? I had no work to do on Saturday. So I didn't. And I prayed all weekend. And I said, hey, I know you're fixing to do something, but I need you to do it now. Right? Like,
man,
try and pray him into
demanding back then, aren't you? How'd that work out for you?
Yes. Not well. A lot of lessons. So he let me stew all weekend, and I had one job left to do. I got two little kids, wife, and my wife is sick at the time as well, and not like with the flu, like she's got like a heart condition thing going on, and it's scaring the bejesus out of me. And I had one little job left to do, $200 job, Monday morning. So I go do it Monday morning. And I'm like, this is it. And it was changing out a meter socket for, an old house had an old meter socket, put a new electrical meter on the side. Okay, cool. I was an electrician by trade. And as I'm turning the last lug, the last screw in the box, the phone starts ringing. And it's a guy that we booked a fence job for him like a year ago, or bid the job. And he's like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I think it's time to get started. I'm like, cool. I need 50% down. I'll be over in 9 minutes. He's like, sounds great. Hang up the phone with him. It immediately rings again. It's a guy that we had bid a porch for, and he's like, we're ready to start. So there's like $9,000 here, $13,000 here. I was like, okay, I'll see you about 10 a.m. And the phone rang off the hook until Wednesday midday when I had to turn it off because we'd booked up 6 months worth of work.
In 3 days.
In 2.5 days.
Love it.
And so it was like, hey, I see you, kid. And I see you has been an ongoing concept between he and I.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been we'll just say this. I know exactly what a 9mm pistol tastes like. I know exactly what a 12 gauge shotgun tastes like. And there's been these critical moments where it's like, hey, we see you, kid. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I start keeping Shabbat and I keep reading. And I'm like, hey, there's like a whole bunch of rules in here that we're supposed to do. And then it's like, no, you're a Judaizer, you're a legalist, you're denying the grace of Messiah. And I'm like, well, no, that doesn't make any sense, because what you're trying to quote is Colossians chapter 2, but you're taking it out of context. And people are like, what? What are you talking about? Because one of the gifts the Father has given me is the brain for things that I ascribe value to is like a sponge.
Yeah.
You know, before we started recording, you were like, hey, how old are you? I don't know. My wife knows that.
Yeah.
But things that I ascribe value to, they just stick. And so, and having the context and dwell time of reading this Bible, any translation, over and over and over again, I know what it says. And so when people make non-biblical or extra-biblical arguments against what I know the Bible says, it used to be that I would punch them in the face with the Bible and go, no, you're wrong. Until I realized, actually, yes, the word is a sword and a shield, but it's also a first aid kit. It's for healing. It's for recovery. You know, if we look at the work of Messiah, what did he do? Like, he healed people. He absolved people of sin. He met them exactly where they were at. There's no one in the first coming of Christ that he just beats the shit out of.
No.
Like, he could have, but he didn't. And so in that model, trying to walk in that, it's like, how do I use this word to heal people? And what does that look like? And so I'm now what would be referred to as a whole Bible believer. I like to tell people that I'm so Christian that Christians don't like me anymore. And I'm good with it, because, you know, Old Testament and New, you can read in the book of Deuteronomy and in the book of Revelation, do not add to or take away from this word. We're not allowed to do that. And both Judaism and Christianity have done that. And so I wanted to get back to, what does the Bible say? What did Messiah say? What did Messiah do? Because 1 Peter 2:21, for this you are called Messiah, having suffered for your sins, that you would walk in his steps. Yeah. Okay. Well, I got to know what his steps were in order for me to walk in them.
No, but you know what he did, and you can learn what he did.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, like, why be, and the word became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Okay. So everywhere before Matthew chapter 1, when we see the word, it refers, the word, capital W word, refers to the 613 commands, laws, and right rulings, aka the Torah. And the word became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Why? So that we would be able to see how to do it. And that's a whole different conversation. But King Jimmy translated Torah as law. Here's your laws. It's not what it means. It means instruction.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. This is your guide. This is your guide through life. This is what you should use in order to see what it was that he did.
Right. And I'll just say this one thing and then let you get a word in. So Matthew 22:36, guy comes up to Messiah and he says, you know, teacher, teacher, which in the Hebrew is rabbi, 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 what's the greatest command in all the Torah? And he says, there are two. The first is Deuteronomy 6:5. You shall love the Lord your God, Yahweh your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, with everything you got. And the second is like unto it. Leviticus 19:18. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. On this hangs all the Torah and the prophets. So if you consider those the two greatest commands, love God, love people, then you look at the 10 commands in Exodus 20, half of them are how to love God. There is no God but God, right? Don't take his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, right? Don't be worshiping idols. Cool, right? The other half are how to love people. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't be an adulterer, right? Don't bear false witness. So there's your love God, love people. And then you dig into the 613, half of them are how to love God with everything you got. The other half are how to love people. So Messiah is completely correct when he says, hey, just do these two things. Love God with everything you got, love people. If you
So,
need to click here for more help, go to the 10 Commands.
so has that changed the way if somebody misquotes the Bible or says something incorrectly, has that changed the way now you handle that?
I've gotten way better
Okay.
at it. I used to be what we call a Torah terrorist. And I would just, but I think that's rooted in, it was very frustrating. I've heard there's 54,000 denominations in Christendom. Okay. There's a few different thousand sects of Judaism. And so the idea that there's some unified worship of God and God made flesh is at this point a fallacy. And so everybody's got their pet doctrines and dogmas, which is exactly what Messiah came to do away with. Read Colossians 2, by the way, for anybody who's, like, this bear guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, cool. And my apologetics used to be very closed hand fists that I would beat people with. And now it's like, let's look for critical points of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You think God's real. Okay, why? Why do you think that? Do you believe in Messiah? What does that belief look like for you? And then if there's a way for me to reprove and instruct, to teach, to heal, to move people more towards what is biblical truth, I'm good with it. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of key verses for that. Proverbs 24, verse 12, essentially says that accountability and understanding track together. Okay. So whatever the Father has revealed to you as the truth of his word, that's your understanding, and you're held accountable to that level of understanding.
Correct.
Now, I have been maybe shown a little bit more than others, so much so that October of last year, or October of 2023, I was ordained as a pastor, which is freaking weird, sister, because I don't know how to. I still say 4-letter words. It is still my go-to in conflict is like, well, I'm just going to beat this guy up. Like, no, that's not loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
I like a glass of whiskey. I like driving fast. Like, I do some pretty dangerous things at work and in my ministries. And so being an ordained pastor, when my entire life, the model that I have seen for what a pastor is, has been some sopping wet P word wearing a pink colored polo shirt up behind
you made the perfect statement, though. You said, right, how many thousands of different denominations, how many thousands of different sects of Judaism, right? So that being said, like, they're literally, you identify with the people who are following you. You are the one best equipped to help them because you know where they've been, right? Mm-hmm. And so you might look a little bit different than some of these other people, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I like to call it faith for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Because, I have a very interesting existence. I get literal Navy SEALs and U.S. Army Special Forces that come to me and they're like, I have questions about God. Cool. Do you know what an honor it is to be able to baptize those men in living water, right? Because I can go there with them. Law enforcement, same thing. Mechanics and truck drivers and again, people that have calluses and scars, whether they're physical and external or they're spiritual and emotional and internal, which are way harder to identify and diagnose, by the way.
Yeah.
But people get on me all the time because I tell people I'm not a nice guy, but I'm a good guy, right? I'm one of the good guys, but I'm genuinely like not nice. I'm not pretty.
Direct. I would use direct as the word for you.
Yeah, I don't have all the good words, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not the person to minister to the old ladies, but I'll make sure if she's a widow, she's got everything she needs.
I bet those old ladies probably love you too.
I
bet the old ladies probably love you too. That's a bad example because those little old ladies probably take right to you.
Yeah, I've got a gaggle of them that dote on me. If I'm being perfectly honest.
Do. I have no doubt.
But like, I'm not the guest speaker at the mega church. I'm never going to fit in there, and that's okay because I need to talk to the people that would never walk in the mega church in the first place.
Yeah,
because they need God too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I think that's one of the things that I love most about you is your ability to be authentic to yourself, even if you're even if you're armored up, even if you're guarded to some degree, like you are authentically yourself. And to your point, like that's who you're meant to help. The people who can relate to you and that you can relate to them and you can speak to them the word in a way that they then comprehend.
We just did a men's retreat here recently, a couple weekends ago, and had 80 men there, like real men. And not males. These are men, right? And we're on Lake Texoma in North Texas, and it was cold. You're talking early February, and we were doing Bible study, and I could feel it. There was a guy who needed to go in the water, so I just walked down to the lake, and I was wearing sandals, even though it's cold because I'm stupid, and take my sandals off. I got shorts on, and I just walked into the lake. And I turn around, and here come men, ones and twos, maybe three. And it was an honor to baptize men for 90 minutes straight.
That's awesome.
Had 13 guys come and get in the water, men. And every one of them, just to visibly observe them, every one of them, tats and scars and wounds and strong, muscular men. And I get to reintroduce these specimens of humanity back to the creator of the universe.
That's amazing.
What an honor. Because they need the living water too.
Yep.
And most churches, if they were to walk in, they would have to turn the volume down somewhat on who they are to even be accepted into the presence of all the other really nice people. And that's something that Christendom as a whole can do a better job at, because if we look at the pattern of Messiah, he hung out with sinners, man.
Oh yeah. 100%.
One of my best friends was an outlaw biker. I love that guy. I trust him implicitly. And 10 years ago, total scumbag. But me too, total scumbag,
Yeah. I love it. Well, I know we could talk all day long. So we're already getting close to our time for episode 1. So I'm sure there's going to be a 2. So I'll hit you up for that. But I want to go into these questions I have for you, because some of it you've alluded to and some of it I know you have more. So the first one is, what have you read or absorbed to feel like you really know God aside from the Bible?
Aside from the Bible.
Yeah. Obviously, the Bible's the big one. That's everybody's thing, right? But is there anything else resource-wise that you've utilized for yourself aside from the Bible?
A lot of what I'm reading right now is definitely what I would consider higher level stuff. But I got a book right here. Where'd it go? Right there. This dude, Charles Spurgeon.
Lectures to My
Students by Charles Spurgeon.
Okay.
And Spurgeon, Charles Haddon Spurgeon, if you don't know who he was a preacher in the late 1800s who was a man's man. Big, hard hands. He would smoke cigars from the pulpit and just rain fire and brimstone on people, and loved God and loved people. So this is a good one right here. Lectures to My Students.
One I've not seen yet, so that's good. That's awesome. Thank you.
I would also say I try and do a little bit of a personal inventory every day, because the reflection on that personal inventory allows me to see whether I'm operating in the flesh or operating in the spirit. And so that's something that I read every day as well.
Do you start that in the morning or do you do it at night?
No, I do that in the morning. The mornings are mine. I have so many things going on that if I don't get up early and intentionally create space in the morning, I won't get any. Yeah.
Okay. I do the same. So I love that. All right. The second question, you alluded to the Holy Spirit a little bit. So we've kind of talked about this. For you, and I know you said in those moments you knew spirit from the convulsions, right? And the shaking you were having. Is there any other way now that you've gotten past that part that you have a physical connection or manifestation? What does that feel like for you physically now?
When I play drums, it is a form of worship. And I can all the way feel the spirit. And as weird as it sounds, so can other people. and I don't understand it. But whether it's in person or recorded or something, people can feel the force of the energy of the Spirit. And then also oftentimes when I'm speaking, like you and I are talking right now, we've been doing this for 45 minutes. I thought it was like 10 minutes, right? And so the manifestation of the Spirit, I guess physically, lastly for me, when I'm baptizing people, the way I do it, everybody's a little bit different. I get into the water first and I wash myself first. I take 3 handfuls of water and I get me out of the way because this isn't about me at all, right? This is about whoever it is that's going in the water and the creator of the universe. I can't be any detraction from this.
Right.
And I stand in the water, I have them come to me, and I wrap them up in a hug. And I say, talk to dad. Don't talk to me. Talk to dad. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they just weep. And in that moment, the intercessory prayers that I have prayed in the Spirit for these men, I knew by the Spirit what it was that they needed to atone for that they couldn't even verbalize themselves. And that is so physically overwhelming in the Spirit that it's like my soul is going to fly out of my body at any moment. There's just so much energy, positive energy in that I can barely contain it.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. All right. Well, lastly, as we absorb that, so if you had the opportunity now to help that 15-year-old you were when you had the one experience in Washington, D.C. where you felt the presence of God through prayer. But what about that kid, right, where you were just girls and drums? If you had one offering for that kid today, what would you say to him?
Number one, people make mistakes. God doesn't. So you got to learn to forgive. In fact, Messiah tells us if we don't forgive our brothers and sisters their trespasses, ours won't be forgiven.
Yeah.
And you can't love your neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself. So you got to figure out how to love yourself so that you can love your neighbor as yourself, so that you can then forgive, so that your sins will be forgiven. And that's a process, right? That's a daily grind. How do I love me? And the answer is in the flesh, I'm not lovable. In the Spirit, I'm all right. I'm okay. Right. So that's the first thing. People make mistakes. God doesn't. Next thing would be, why so serious? Chill.
I love that.
Chill. Nobody gets out of this place alive.
Yeah.
None of us get out of this place alive. Right. So just take a deep breath, relax a little bit, look around, talk to God. Structured prayer is good, but conversation in the Spirit with the Creator is just amazing. What do you think we should do today, Dad? I'm open to whatever adventures we're going to go on today. I can't wait to be amazed by whatever it is that you're going to do today, right? Why so serious? We've got our calendars and our checkbooks and our Google Sheets, and God's like, that's cute. What's this?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and learn to forgive yourself, forgive other people. And relationship matters. Relationship is what really matters with the Father. And you cannot run far enough away from him for him to stop loving you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm proof of it. So just quit running. And for anybody who's listening right now and they're running, stop. Put the brakes on, dumbass. You can't get far enough away. And so that's repentance in Hebrew is the word teshuva or shuv, and it literally means to turn. Stop running, turn around, and just cry out to Dad, and he'll meet you exactly where you're at.
Love that. What a way to end today.
Thank you.
Are you going to come back?
Are you kidding me?
Okay, good. There's so much we didn't get to talk about today.
I was going to say, but there's at least 3 or 4 more of these, in the hopper.
Oh, yeah, at least 3 or 4. And people are going to eat them up. They're going to be like, man, I want to hear what TJ's got to say today for sure.
Well, if your audience is good with it, I'd be honored to come back.
Oh, well, thank you. I would love to have you back. So we will get that scheduled for sure. Beautiful. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on today. And is there any way that people can follow you? Where can they find you so they can get more of your wisdom?
Oh my, yeah.
Or we'll just put it in the show notes. All the lists
Yeah,
and everything. We'll put it in the
YouTube,
show notes.
Bear Independent and BEAR Independent. There's a podcast, and I got 2 ministries and 5 companies and blah blah blah. You find all that. Just go to YouTube, Bear Independent, and figure out if you like me or not.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about any of the work that you do either, which is so important for his kingdom. So
it's okay.
Yeah,
it's the
we'll do it
Father's
next
will,
time.
sister.
That's
It's all right.
What came out today was meant to come out, right?
Exactly.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening today. And we'll see you on the next episode.